You're watching Atlanta Forward, a Channel 2 Action News primetime special.
Georgia recently won a major court battle in the water wars with Florida and Alabama, but the state still needs more water. Georgia's House Speaker thinks he has a creative way to solve the shortage.
Here is Channel 2's John Bachman with a look at that and some other ideas being considered.
Metro Atlanta is expanding. That means the clock is ticking on finding a solution to our water demands.
We get about 50 inches of water a year. So if we don't solve it, it's our own fault.
Georgia lawmakers are considering a variety of solutions, from reservoirs to partnerships with neighboring states. One proposed idea is trading high-speed rail for access to the Tennessee River.
They're going to need some transportation enhancements. They need better access to the ports, perhaps better access to a larger airport. We need to think outside the box here.
Some have even suggested extending the Georgia border to gain access to the Tennessee River.
We've had a kind of a long-standing dispute about the location of the boundary line between Georgia and Tennessee. Some have suggested that we ought to take that matter to court and spend a lot of money litigating it. Maybe there's a better way.
Talks with Tennessee have yet to start, but Ralston says he would like to start conversations by the end of the year. A more fiscally feasible solution is the conversion of old rock quarries into water storage.
They're already there, and it would take some work to make sure that the water that might be stored in those is going to be of a quality that can be reused.
Another possibility supported by a deal is the creation of new reservoirs.
Reservoirs is certainly one of those components, probably the most expensive of those components, and the one that will take the longest to bring online.
One example of that is the Glade Farms Reservoir in Hall County. Millions of dollars have been spent on the project, and it's behind schedule.
Personally, I thought that we would be ready to pump water by the end of 2010. As it stands now, it looks like it'll be 2015 or 20 before we pump any water.
Do you still think it's a good idea?
It's absolutely essential to the future of this county that we build that reservoir.
But some critics argue the process is another example of government waste.
We've spent $2 million on consulting and professional services from Hall County's perspective since July 1 of 2009. We spent $3.4 million on prior services, professional and consulting services that were done when the project was a privately driven project.
Dan Chapman, you've been around the whole state having a careful look at this issue.
I have, and what strikes me is that we've had 40 years, Tad, I'll put this back to the ARC, we've had 40 years we've been talking about water. Where are we going to get it?
Well, we've been in litigation with our two neighboring states, Alabama and Florida, now for 20 of those 40 years, and if you look over the last 20 years, we've had massive growth. But the answer to your question, where are we going to get it? It falls out of the sky. We have about 50 trillion gallons of water that falls on the state of Georgia every calendar year, and of that 50 trillion, we capture 1 trillion. So what we need are long-term strategies to capture more water that falls from the sky through the governor's investment in additional reservoirs north of the city. Secondly, we need a control plan. We have to work with the federal government through the Corps of Engineers to better manage the existing water resources that we have, particularly those that are in Lake Lanier, to make sure that now that the judge has ruled that that water is available for our consumption, that we manage it effectively, serve the needs downstream, but at the same time conserve water effectively for use for consumption here in the Atlanta region.
We've also had Amir Farouki with Georgia Forward, some downstate, as you also mentioned, Tad, opposition to any time we try to do anything with water or transit or what have you. What do you think, Amir? I mean, are we now at a point now where we think folks downstream will work together with us on things like this?
And the reality is we're all in this together, and there's in some respects, ample water. There's states out west that have much fewer water resources than we do that do a much better job both conserving and using water, and we have a lot to learn from them. But ultimately, the solutions are going to come from the metro region working with those downriver and those upriver. And I think we'll find, because of crisis situations, an acceptable solution from conservation, reservoirs, changing the rate structure that we've seen in the city of Atlanta that has reduced water usage tremendously since the drought in '09, but that at the end of the day, communication around different regions of the state is going to produce the best result.
Water, education, traffic, all potential roadblocks to Atlanta moving forward. Our panel of community leaders is back next to discuss solutions we can get started on right now.
Welcome back to Atlanta Forward, a Channel 2 Action News primetime look at the challenges and solutions impacting our future growth.
We've been looking at how traffic, education, and water are all challenges as Atlanta works to move forward.
And our panel of community and business leaders helping us address how we can get over the roadblocks and what will be crucial in 2012. Also here, the AJC's Dan Chapman. Dan, talking about some of these issues today, and we've been talking about issues that have been on the table for decades. And what's different now?
You know, I think that's an excellent question that we should put to our panelists here. It could be either water or it could be transit, and for 40 years we've been, saying we've got problems, we're going to grow, we're going to get big, yet nothing's been resolved. Mr. Frazier, you back during the Olympics, you played a pivotal role there. That was perhaps our shining moment. The mayor has talked about, I forget the exact term you used.
Second act.
Second act, but prior to that, a malaise, a sort of, we're in a funk, how do we get out of this? I mean, is it leadership or what?
Well, we talked about it during the break. We're talking about governance of transportation. We should be talking about governance in general. I mean, the fact that this project is Atlanta Forward is going to set everybody's teeth on edge in Meriwether County. So this is about all these counties. And Tad's got the mandate, and the ARC's been around here forever. But the local politicians haven't been willing to let them do their job.
Well, that raises a good question. I mean, whose responsibility is it? Is it the ARC? Did they drop the ball? I mean, I'm still trying to
ARC has never been empowered sufficiently to do that. They've been advising and trying to keep people working together. The chamber's never been, metropolitan chambers, but never been empowered to take that responsibility. No one has been empowered to take it, and therefore it hasn't been done. And it is 40 years later, and I was here when we were first talking about it.
What's happened over the last 5 years is it stopped working. We have a transportation system that suddenly does not serve the needs of our folks. We have a water crisis that in the long run is really, I think, our biggest issue, as we've discussed, and we have issues with regard to public education. So all of a sudden, the recipe that has worked beautifully in Atlanta for 40 years has stopped working. And I think it is leadership. It is time for us to make the difficult decisions necessary to turn this battleship and focus on the next 40 years in a very, very different way than we have the last 40 years.
The problems that we're dealing with are driven by success.
Yes. Yes.
So, we can't, in the midst of dealing with things that are hard, forget that we're here because our growth projections were faster than anyone ever conceived of. The number of people who are moving, we're the second fastest growing MSA in the United States of America, second to Dallas. So the problems that we're being forced to grapple with on this program are problems that were generated because other people decided to come here quickly and we thrived. I think that most of the problems we're talking about on this program today are problems of will. And I think that we are at an extraordinary moment here where you are seeing an alignment of business leaders, political leaders, and civic leaders who are ready to take these things on. But if you really drill down and go through this program today, there are will problems. Michael Jordan changed his game for the sixth championship ring. It didn't look like it looked when he won the first. Atlanta's no different. And we've got all these little nimble people. Charlotte aspires to be Atlanta and all of the rest. We have all of these nimble competitors with fresh legs, and they are competing to be what we are. So I wanted to add a little joy because we weren't talking about kind of how we got here.
The mayor has said he believed that Atlanta had lost its mojo. So in trying to get back its mojo, we have this momentum now. So Amir, how do we get that to the rest of the state so that they get on board?
Well, I think the rest of the state understands the importance of the Atlanta region to the state's long-term economic success. The challenge oftentimes in the metro area is getting Atlantans to understand that the rest of the state is important to our success here in the region, those of us who live here. On transportation, there's really two issues. One is the governance issue. We are an incredibly balkanized metro region, which makes it very difficult to address problems that cross municipal and county lines. And transportation is first among those. We have been able to, as the mayor suggested, get away with not addressing these infrastructure problems over the last 30 years because we've been growing at a very rapid rate. But we've been underinvesting in transportation. Around the state, Georgia invests $380 per person in transportation. That's second lowest in the country. Our competitor states, whether it's Florida or Texas, invest almost twice as much. And we're beginning to see the pitfalls of that.
Sam, as you know, oftentimes effective leading is effective marketing. If you believe that it's a must, and you've said that, the mayor has said that, the governor has said that, among others, tell me about the marketing you've got ahead of you.
Well, I think first we realize that this is not just an Atlanta referendum. The other 11 regions of this state are also going to be planning a referendum simultaneously. So it's a whole statewide referenda broken up by metropolitan areas. So I think it's in best interest that we really talk about the whole state's infrastructure here on transportation. We've concentrated today in this program on Atlanta alone, but the others are very important too.
The discussion is not yet over.
Still ahead, how you can learn more about all three issues and potential solutions as Atlanta moves forward.
Over the last hour, we've explored 3 challenges Atlanta is facing and potential solutions.
There is consensus that we will not see progress unless we address traffic gridlock, provide a quality education for Atlanta children, and protect the water supply for Georgia's next generation.
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is also exploring how Atlanta can move forward. Their in-depth week-long series kicked off in today's edition and also on AJC.com.
And tomorrow, see why Dallas is comparable to Atlanta in many ways and quite different in some others. Plus, a look at why Georgia's system of so many different elected governments and competing interests can get in the way of progress.
And later this week, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution examines the specific industries that will help Atlanta and the entire region grow in the coming years.
We thank you for joining us for a look at what it might take to move Atlanta forward. I'm Justin Farmer.
I'm Jovita Moore. Have a good evening.